Saving Marty, Chapter 18. Is he friendly with strangers? The rest of the show was awesome, and then we headed for the parking lot. You're limping, Double, Pal said. She made herself his crutch. Limping, said Double. I'm flying. This was one special day. Tell you what it was, said Mr. Lee. Marty nudged my pocket for his tennis ball. He liked to bounce it and catch it. Is he friendly with strangers? Somebody behind us said. The Taylor brothers, one long-haired and the other shaved bald. Congratulations, Longhair said. Sometimes you have to tip your cap. Sometimes you do, one of their buddies said, except he didn't tip his cap. He wore a no-sleeves t-shirt to show everybody he spent his days in the weight room. The bunch of them were slit-eyed from too much beer. I smelled it in the wind. The bald one, his face softened. He squatted. Come here, sweet boy. Marty trotted to him, tail wagging, and then that Taylor kicked Marty hard enough to make him squeal. I hugged Marty to me. I couldn't breathe. I was so mad I was paralyzed. Pal was yelling who knows what. Double and Mr. Lee held her back. You got a moon of a head on you, pig boy, the muscly boy said. Don't he look a tard, though? You owe Mr. Taylor a TV, melonhead. He is 12 years old, Double said. You're a grown man. How about you act like it? They kept following us. Him and that pig have the same size head, right? Gentlemen, Mr. Lee said, kindly stop harassing the boy. Or what? Cowardly sheriff stepping to you, Taylor. Go back to China, man. He's a Korean American, you idiot, Pal said. Pal, let's go, Mr. Lee said, hurrying us toward the truck. I may even pray for those boys tonight, Double said. You imagine waking up and having to be them? I pulled down the ramp for Marty. Pal and I followed him into the truck bed, and Mr. Lee flipped up the gate. Pal was crying mad. How could you let them talk to you that way, Daddy? You needed to set those boys straight. They would have listened, you think? Mr. Lee said. I've learned there's a time to fight and a time to let it wash off. Now you all did so well today, and we can't let them ruin that. You look like your mom up there, Paloma. Like you would have been just as happy to sing if nobody was watching. You got swept up in it, too. You too, Renzo. It was a sight. He got in the cab with Double, and we drove off. You got a droopy booger in your nose, Pal said. Where else would I have it? I wiped it away with my sleeve. I was so ashamed. Mr. Lee was right about knowing when to fight. I should have stood up for Marty. If my dad was here, he would have wasted that Taylor crew. Pal nudged me. Hey, we're going to Pittsburgh. She put her knuckles up for a bump, and I bumped her. Marty bumped her too with his hoof. He leaned into me and was shivering bad as I was. Soothing him soothed me. His fifth-place ribbon flapped in the highway wind, and the good feeling started to come back. There was no way Mom would make me give up Marty now, not after the way he shined today. Chapter 19, Putting Down the Old Foot. Mom was at our rickety kitchen table again, papers everywhere. 60 days past due. Final notice. Pay now. Well, she said. He won 5th place, I said. She looked up from her laptop. I smiled so wide my face hurt. I saw Double's dentures end up end to end, too. He straightened Marty's ribbon, and Marty bounced his tennis ball. 5th place isn't winning, Mom said. I told her about the TV, how we'd get $400 for it. Now that's a deal, she said. Spending $500 to make $400? I need to put the old foot on this one, Double said. Before or after you get your knee fixed. Marty's family. Mom pecked at her laptop. Well, Double said, can we keep him or not? Now you're asking, Mom said. Well, she glared at Double for a second, then turned back to her papers. He stays then, and that's that, Double said unsurely. Come on, Renz, let's wash him down in the barn. He's dusty from the wars, our porcine gladiator. Marty, Belle, let's go. When we were safely outside, Double and I silently howled. We bumped chests like morons at a Steelers game. Touchdown! Marty ran in circles around Bella. Renzo, come back here, Mom called for the kitchen. Uh-oh, Double said, and he beat it out of there with Belle and Marty. I went through that door wincing. Yes, one false move, and I'm hauling him to the butcher, Mom said, and that includes peeing on my begonias. He'll only pee on trees from now on, I swear. I made to scoot. Renzo, how'd it go today? I told you, he got 5th place. With the open mic, I meant. You and Pal sang, right? Tap, tap, tap on that laptop. We did all right, Ma. We're going to be on the Pittsburgh Jamboree next month. She stopped tapping. Why, that's something, Ren. Something big for sure. Mom, maybe you could come watch us. Well, it's just so hard to get away on Fridays with a bingo going on at the church, and all those old ladies, Miss McGrath and such. Not a one of them can drive. I'll be chauffeuring them to their funerals. I understand, Mom. No problem. I'd be there if I could. Did Dad ever play live radio? I said. What? She said, why? Because if he did, his guitar already got through it once. A broadcast, I mean, tens of thousands of people listening. I'm scared, Ma. Pal and I have this chance to do something, something real. What if I mess it up for her? You'll be just fine. You'll be great. Sure, thanks. I started out. He played live on the university station, she said. That stopped me. The university station covered a huge area into Ohio and West Virginia. Big stars dropped by there all the time. He was making a name for himself, not even trying to. That's why he was so easy to watch up there. You could tell he was playing for fun. Folks were starting to pack the bars to see him. College kids mostly. He wasn't much older than they were, but he was older, He had gravity. The kids pulled him on the radio for a whole hour, prime time, just him and his guitar. He was... She paused. Just plain true, I said. Yes, she said. Somebody in Detroit got wind of him, a record producer. Marty was supposed to go up there, but then things turned worse with this war, and he felt he had to, go over there instead. Her voice had become so soft I almost couldn't hear her. That man, she said, that man. Then she snapped to. All right, that's enough now. Go help Double before he breaks his other knee out there in the dark. Mom, for heaven's sake, Lorenzo, what? Thanks for letting Marty stay. Go on now, she said. Outside, the stars were sharp and winking. It felt like a good night for prayers. I put one up there for Loretta Friedas that she'd make the volleyball team someday. Chapter 20. Strawberries, Nuts, Strawberries. We had 4 weeks until the Pittsburgh Jamboree. We spent 3 going through Pal's notebooks. She'd filled a dozen with her songs over the years, but none felt right to her. I'd lose my mind if I could find it, she said. I need Fro Fruity. We hiked down to Carmela's Confections. Pal slumped onto the bench out front with Bella while Marty tried to follow me inside. Nuh-uh, I said. Oh, let him come in for a minute for the air conditioning, Mrs. Carmela said. Thanks, Mrs. C. I got Pal her parfait and more swirls for me. Mrs. C gave me a bowl of vanilla, too, for Marty and Bella. They cleaned that up quick. Pal was less happy with hers. I wanted strawberries, nuts, strawberries, she said with her mouth full. This is nuts, strawberries, nuts. You get it wrong every time. I'll bring it back, I said. I'm practically done with it by now anyway. Exactly, I said. When we get rich, I'm going to have an ice cream parlor in my house, Pal said. You? I'm going to have a cherry red surfboard. Mrs. Brancinelli called to us from across the street. Renzo, help me here a minute? She struggled to manage her walker and a plastic shopping bag so heavy with frozen turkey. Or so I thought. Where are you headed, Mrs. B? Pal said. John Mason's office. Hello, Bella. Marty, you're getting so big. Why do you want to go to Mason's? I said. Don't make me talk about it, she said, a mess of tears. Whatever you do, don't look in the bag. Her tabby cat was in the bag, dead. Whoa, I said. It was Keith. Mrs. P's and Q's was sunning herself on the porch when that half-wolf charged from the woods, plucked her up from the stoop, and shook her to bits. Ma'am, Pal said, let's call my dad and he can talk to Mason. I'm going whether you all come with me or not. She rushed her walker to the showroom window of John Mason's real estate. I peeked between a support our troops and a proud to hire veteran stickers on the glass, and there he was on the phone, cigarette in one hand. Phone in one hand, cigarette in the other hand, pacing. The man was a reminder to stand up straight. Cigarettes fumes off him like the devil's mist. Mrs. B rapped the window. Keith materialized from the dimness and lunged at us. I forgot the glass was there to protect us, and I might have screamed louder than Mrs. B. Gah! Pal said. John Mason, you come out here, you horrible man, Mrs. B said, and you keep that Keith inside. That's not Keith, he yelled through the glass. That's Katrina. Well, then keep her inside, too. The dog snuck out with him, of course. We hid behind a giant plant pot full of weeds and cigarette stubs, and no plants. Bella hid with us, but Marty wanted to play with Katrina. I latched onto his collar, and he dragged me toward the dog. Katrina dragged Mason toward Marty. The dog snarled and gnashed. Marty went to his belly and peed on Mason's porch. Mason pulled a half-eaten candy bar from his pocket and threw it into his office. Katrina went after it, and Mason shut the door. He eyed Marty. Why are you walking around with a leashed pig? He said. Never mind that, said Mrs. B. Show him, Renzo. I opened the shopping bag. The old buzzard peered in. He frisked his dirty jean jacket for his glasses. He looked like less than an evil land baron and more like a construction worker who should have retired 20 years ago. His pants were patched at the knees. Why do you have a dead cat in an Applebee's bag? He said. Mrs. B described Keith's treachery, the slinking and the pouncing, the flying fur and blood, blood, blood. Meanwhile, Mason hosed off Marty's pee on the porch. Marty tried to slip the water jet until Mason squirted him in the eyes. I'll give you $300 to walk him to the butcher for me, Mason said. Mrs. B finished up her sermon with, so if you can't train that Keith to stay off people's property, then he'll meet my shotgun next time. Did the dog have a gold stripe between its eyes? Mason said. How should I know? Mrs. B said. It all happened so fast. And it wasn't at least twice the size of Katrina in there, was it? It was just about her size, I should think. Then it wasn't Keith, Mason said. Well, it was one of your dozen wretched dogs, Mrs. B said. Didn't say it wasn't. What do you expect anyway? They're dogs. They roam. He nodded at Mrs. P's and Q's, or what was left of her. That's your house cat, you say? Was, Mrs. B said. Then you ought to have kept it in the house. Tell you what, people like you tick me off. Here I am bringing in construction jobs, keeping this place from turning into a ghost town just barely, and you all come to nag me about a cat? And you, he said to me, keep selling grainy fruit the way you've been doing it the past few years, and your mom will be begging me to buy her out. Tell her she should come to me now while I'm still inclined to make a generous offer. We'd rather starve than sell to you, I said. Then starve, he said. His driver pulled up in a monster truck. Mason brushed past me, talking over his shoulder as he went. You got a mouth on you, boy. I ought to call your daddy in. He stopped himself. He must have remembered that my father was dead, and a war hero on top of that. He turned around and looked like he was about to say sorry. He didn't, but he was about to. I saw it in his eyes, that same squinty look Double got when he talked about my dad. I knew him, your pop, he said, his voice quiet. I was too stunned by his change to ask him how. How did you know my dad? Tell me something I don't know about him. Tell me why my mom grits her teeth every time I bring him up. Mason caught himself being soft. He scowled and climbed into his truck. It shot blue fumes at us as it vroomed away. Mrs. B dabbed her eyes with an Applebee's napkin. I'll need help burying P's and Q's. Yes, ma'am, I said, and I tucked the bag under my arm. Don't squish her now, she said. I whistled for Bella, and she came running. Where's Marty? I said. Pal pointed him out at the trash can. He was offering his hoof to a pigeon for a shake. That dog makes friends wherever he goes, Mrs. B said. I wish I could be like that. That pig. Behind Marty was the Army recruiting office. A sign hung in the window. There's strong, and then there's Army strong.